Well, good evening, everyone. We're postponing for just a couple of, I don't know, like a minute. We're good? We're not postponing. Look at that. We're good. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Free. I'm Ryan, and I am the pastor here at Free Spiritual Community. And it is good to be with you on another Saturday night. Couple of things you might need to know. One, if you're new to this community, we're a community for addicts, loved ones of addicts, and spiritual refugees. And our mission here is to break the silence of addiction and create space for healing, recovery, and spiritual connection. The other thing I should tell you, or maybe you all could tell me, what's the one thing we don't do here on the count of three? 1, 2, 3. We don't do shame, and my good friend Lex, who's sitting in the front row, reminded me tonight, this beautiful reminder. Y'all know a sermon's going to come out of this, but we don't do shame on each other, and we don't do shame on ourselves. We're pretty good at that first one most of the time, but it's that second one that trips us up. So keep that in mind. When we say we don't do shame, no shame, we don't do shame, God doesn't do shame, we honor our own journey when we accept where others are in theirs. It's about how we treat ourselves, too. Hey, listen, if you're with us online tonight on Facebook or YouTube in your living room or kitchen or free circle or sober living house, we're glad you're part of this community. We're glad you tune in each week. And I know we have people from all over the country that join us on these nights, and we're just glad you're part of this community. So welcome. A few announcements I need to let you know about. One, if you are new here, we have welcome bags just outside these doors. In the welcome bag, you'll find some information about who we are. You'll find some fresh roasted wagon coffee, roasted by Tammy and some other ladies. And so if you're new, grab one on the way out. That is for you, so take it. We also have new merchandise. Do we have a slide for the new merchandise? Yes, we have all kinds of new shirts, free kids shirts. We have pink shirts because apparently people love pink. And we have some of the older shirts too. But if you want some new swag, make your way over to the cafe where the ping pong table is, and you can find it there. $25 for all items except the kid shirts. The kid shirts are $17. Is that right, Tam? Yes, the kid shirts are $17. So if you want to get in on that action, now is the time. Listen, we're doing baptisms here on May 28th. That's a Saturday night. The way we do baptisms here, we'll do them in our custom-built wagon, the wagon that's right out here. We'll bring the wagon right in here. It'll be filled with water. I think we've got 7, 8, 9 people on the list so far. If you're interested, it's not too late, but you need to let me know like by tonight. We're going to have a what is baptism meeting, like I hate to call it a class. I don't know what else to call it, but a what is baptism class this Tuesday night. And if you want to be a part of that, let me know before you leave here today or shoot me a message today or tomorrow. And I'd love to have you be part of that. In 2 weeks, on May 28th, it's our after-service party, our after-party. And we're teaming up with Holy Kicks on this one. They do great work in the community with the most impoverished and disenfranchised, marginalized people. And one of the ways they help people out is they literally put new kicks on their feet, new shoes. And they build relationships with them. And they're doing great work in the community with our homeless brothers and sisters. So we said, hey, we want to team up with y'all. Y'all heard from, I believe it was the executive director who was here last week. Anyway, y'all heard about the work, and we're teaming up with them, and we said, hey, let's try to get 50 pairs of shoes. So bring shoes. They are requesting new shoes, not used shoes. So if you can swing a pair of shoes, bring it next week or the following week, and just stick it in the wagon. We'll try to fill up the wagon. So don't forget about Holy Kicks. That's in 2 weeks. May 28th, there's going to be pizza here, so hang out after the service. There's going to be all kinds of different, y'all know how we do the after party, so stick around, have fun, get to know people. Is that it? Oh, Chris Watson. Is Chris Watson in the house? Chris Watson. Chris Watson is our facilities manager here, and I said, Chris, man, we got to give people an update because we did this Keep Free Cool campaign, and y'all participated in it. We raised a lot of money to get air conditioning in here, and so I said, let's keep the people updated. It got brought up tonight, and I said, there is an update coming. So, Chris, tell us what's happening.
Well, we have an old building. An old building doesn't have air conditioning, and our old building is also limited on our power that's coming in. So we're in the middle of getting some evaluations done so that we can verify we have enough power to get air conditioning, at least in the sanctuary. We are putting in 2 new really big fans here in the next couple of weeks, and we're hoping within the next 2 to 3 weeks to have our primary electrical issues straightened out so that we can have air conditioning in here as the summer begins to heat up a little bit. So bear with us, but we are hoping within the next 1st of June, maybe the middle of June at the very latest, having AC in this room. So fingers crossed, prayers lifted up. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your generous support to get us to where we need to cover our labor to get this stuff installed.
Yeah. Perfect, Chris.
Cool.
Thank you for that.
90 seconds.
I told him 90 seconds, and I think he was right on the money.
And it's due to the caffeine from my frap with the God shot.
All right, y'all go get a frap after the service. The frap with a God shot. I don't know what that is, but you'll have to explain that to us later. All right, y'all. Yes, thank you. As Chris said, did he really just say that? He did. The things you people say just never cease to amaze me. Thank you for all of you who participated in that campaign, and it's going to be cool. And, hey, I checked the weather next Saturday. It's like a high of 59 degrees, so might need some heat on. Y'all know how Colorado works. All right, guys, the way we get started in this community is we start with lifting up the good stuff. We start with gratitude, starting with what we have rather than with what we don't have. So we lift up the good. We celebrate it together. God joins with us in the celebrations. And so what you're going to do is take 3 minutes. If you're online, take 3 minutes. Put it in the YouTube comments or the Facebook comments, because this community wants to celebrate with you and lift you up in that. And if you're in the house, D-Dog, who is our guest storyteller tonight, he's going to pass around the mic, and maybe it's a sobriety anniversary, maybe it's babies or jobs or the new thing in life that you want to celebrate. Just slip up your hand and we will celebrate with you. So take 3 minutes.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. Got that smile upon my face, 'cause there's excitement in the chase, this I know. Yeah, I'm going for the ride and find myself, I am alive, and I soar. Still I run toward the wind and let the challenge draw me in, 'cause I want more. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. 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 Oh, wake up heart and wake up mind, and see the world is yours to find. And with every passing day there's more, calling you out to explore. Get up and go. There is joy found in the race, and I feel it in the place where I'm free. And I simply can't deny it, that I feel adventure calling out to me. Yeah, we are all looking for adventure. 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 and I was meant to be. I'm living free, living free.
D, we had one more right here. Our online community is going to bear with us for just one moment.
My name's Melissa, and I have a year sober.
All right, Melissa.
How about all that sobriety?
Y'all, how cool is that? Drew, come on up here. But I know for our online people, they didn't get to see it, but we had celebration after celebration of like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days sober, a year or so. We have a couple of years sobrieties in here. And anyway, man, it's lives get to come back, and it's a cool thing to see. Did you put your
It's
sunnies
really
on?
bright in here.
Yeah.
Did someone turn on the lights or something?
Drew, tell us some good news.
So yeah, guys, my name's Drew. I'm a volunteer in the back. I used to actually kind of run the show. First of all, hi, Mom. I used to run the show in the back, and we recently actually got a member of the staff here at Free. His name's Bobby G. He's next to me. He's actually the lead now. He's the boss. So I just wanted to take the time to congratulate this dude. He came in with no experience, just like I did. And he really picked it up, and he really has a great vision for this community, for his recovery, and for the tech team as a whole. So I'm just really honored, to be alongside this dude, and I wanted to take the time to acknowledge it. So
Let's give Bobby G a round of applause.
yeah.
Love you, Bobby. Thank you, Drew. Yeah. Oh, Drew. Oh, do you have your mic? Yeah, and I'm just not sure everyone realizes, and we'll need Tammy's mic on, but there's tons of stuff that goes back in the tech team and problems they're solving all the time. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your work back there. It's deeply appreciated. Yes. And we have Tammy Candidate in the house.
Yay! From lattes to celebrations is what we
Lattes
do.
to celebrate. Apparently, I need a frappe with a God shot.
That's good.
All right,
Yes.
hook me up. Hook me up. I know somebody. Okay, let's celebrate together, shall we?
Cindy says, we are celebrating that Austin had a successful surgery to remove his external fixator this week and was able to stand and use a walker to take his next first steps.
All right,
That is
Austin.
big.
Thank you for
Hi,
sharing
Austin.
with us, Cindy.
Awesome.
Kylie says, I'm celebrating 1 year drug-free tonight. All right, and I'll be 2 years alcohol-free in June.
Nice.
Thank you, Free. This community has helped me.
Love
Kylie, we're glad
you.
you're part of this community. Thank you for sharing.
Awesome. Trip and Sharon, I want to celebrate my youngest son, Juan, and his team for winning their baseball game tonight. I also want to celebrate my mom, Betty, for giving birth to the most amazing girl 37 years ago today. Me, Sharon, LOL.
Happy birthday, Sharon.
Happy birthday, Sharon. We love y'all.
That's awesome.
And they're going to be part of baptisms.
Yeah, we'll see y'all Tuesday night for the What is Baptism class. Baptism's on the 28th. Kira says,
Kira.
celebrating my girl Kaylee turning 9 on Monday.
Yay, Kaylee.
Happy birthday, Kaylee.
Hey, Doug says, God helped me define and defend some boundaries this week. Grateful. I love it.
All right,
That's
Doug,
good.
we'll celebrate that with you, brother. Satchel says, my family is celebrating learning after a tumor board's review of my mother's MRI that she does not need any more treatment at this time. She finally gets a well-deserved break, thank God.
Good
Satchel,
stuff.
we'll celebrate that
Good
with you,
stuff,
brother.
Satchel.
Good news, man. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Hey, Julie. Grateful for being able to take care of my dad for a few days after his 8-day hospital stay. He's doing much better. God is good. Been thinking about you, Julie.
All right, Julie. We'll
love
celebrate that. All right, thank you, honey, for being up here, switching out mics. So as you all know, we're in a 6-week series called You Belong. So tonight is part 3. Are we in part 3 or part 4? 4. Why does my my message notes say part 3? I'm assuming because I copied and pasted a title and didn't change it. It is definitely part 4 tonight. So that means we have 3 weeks left, this week and 2 other weeks. And this one's all for the spiritual refugees, those who feel they've been kicked around, tossed around by religion. They were told they don't belong. You belong. Take a look.
Do you believe in God? Almost 90% of Americans say yes. But when you ask people if they attend a church, synagogue, or mosque, the numbers tell a very different story.
Houses of worship have been struggling to grow membership over the past several years. Tonight, new numbers show just how bleak that reality is.
Experts will tell you, look, if you have gone 10, 15 years, you found your groups, you sort of found your thing, you're less likely to return to religion.
So it was a few years ago that my wife, Tammy, she worked for a religious organization. And on this particular afternoon, she was upstairs in our office on a Zoom call with this organization, and I was downstairs. And after the Zoom call had ended, she came downstairs, and y'all, she just kind of had this like deer in the headlights type look about her. And I said, "What was that all about?" And she said, "Well, it was interesting. The owners of the organization got on midway through the call, and they immediately asked me what my belief was about God and gay people." And I said, "So what'd you say?" And she said, "Well, it got even more interesting because apparently the narrative is, well, they watched some of your sermons on YouTube, and so they know what my heathen husband thinks, but they were asking me what I think, and so they were giving me this opportunity to redeem the situation." I said, "Well, what'd you say?" And she said, "Well, I told them that I believe God loves all people, that gay people are also created in God's image, and no, they're not living in sin, and yes, gay people should have a place in the conversation. They're welcome at the table." Yeah, let's celebrate that mess. And I said, "So what'd they say?" And she said, "Well, they let me go." And I said, "Wait a minute, what do you mean they let you take a different position in the organization or like a different path?" And she said, No. Like as of today, I no longer have a job with them." And y'all, I say this, yeah, there's something celebratory about it, but also thinking back to that time, what I can tell you is I watched my wife go through this kind of period where she felt like she was stripped of her belonging, where she was forced out for a belief, which, by the way, for her was a belief that was deeply rooted in God's love for all people. And for some time, she had this experience of being this kind of spiritual loneliness. And y'all, I can't tell you how many people I talk to still that tell me this very similar story, that they were kicked out or pushed out because they didn't have the right belief system. So they were kicked out or pushed out. And it's interesting because the ones doing the kicking and pushing, they try to do so with God's backing, with theological backing. So let's talk about the importance of belonging for the next few minutes. Are you with me? Now, Diana Butler Bass, she is an author, scholar, academic. She's a church historian, religious historian. I highly recommend her work. She wrote a great book called Christianity After Religion. Highly recommend it. In much of her work, she talks about what she calls the great reversal. And it's this reversal from believe, behave, belong to belong, behave, believe. Now, for the past few centuries in Western Christianity has ordered faith in a very particular way. Believe, behave, belong. And churches took this pattern and they turned it into a set of rituals. I mean, think about it. So a child is baptized, or maybe they go through catechism, and they're answering questions about what the church believes. They're answering questions about doctrines. They're answering these questions. They're getting the intellectual content of that particular tradition. Now, once you have the beliefs nailed, then you could graduate from Sunday school and participate in big church and do adult-like practices like worship and prayer and singing and giving. And see, once you learned how to behave, so you got the beliefs, the doctrines down, now you're learning behavior, and once you can correctly behave, well, then you could be offered full membership. I mean, think about it. In the church, things like communion or confirmation, you could belong. And it's a really simple model, isn't it? Believe like us, behave like us, and then you can become one of us. But see, we have to understand it was not always this way. about 500 years ago, Western Christianity divided from a single church into 5 different major church families. So you had Roman Catholicism, Lutheranism, Reformed Christianity, Anglicanism, and Anabaptist faith. Not anti-Baptist, Anabaptist faith. And get this, some of y'all will be surprised at this. At that time, it became all about who could prove that they were more right. Who held the truth? Who was most biblical? And that began the journey of putting religion into the category of one either believes or one doesn't believe. Interesting, isn't it? And it's all a bit odd, isn't it? Because that's not the way most of us function in our lives. Think about the communities or the groups you have become a part of. Think about the communities you became members of. It wasn't because you subscribed to a particular set of beliefs, was it? No, you joined them. You joined that hiking group or that camping club, or you stayed in that 12-step group or that motorcycle club because you were discovering a sense of belonging, a deepening of your relationships. That this belonging was changing you along the way. It was fundamentally changing your life. It on some level addressed the question of who are you? And by the way, I hope that's why, for many of you at least, that's why you're here tonight and part of this free community. Because see, what I could tell you is, since the time we started this almost 4 years ago in our backyard, very few people have come to me and asked questions like, well, Pastor, can you just tell me what you believe? And then I'll decide if I want to be part of this free community. Or, Pastor, could you just tell me, very few people, could you just tell me, like, what are the doctrines of free? And I want to see if I agree with them and line up with them. And then I'll decide if I want to become part of this free community. Nah. You became part of this community because you had a sense of belonging. And it's why we're more comfortable calling this a spiritual community rather than a religious community. It's why we embrace a flexibility in our theology where you can have differing thoughts and different experiences of God. And for many of us, we have become convinced that right relationship is way more important and more significant than having a right belief up here. You see, it's about belonging first. And it's always been about belonging first. It's not that belief and behavior aren't important. We know they are. But it's about belonging first. And this is in alignment with the earliest parts of the Christian tradition. Think about Jesus. Did Jesus ever say things like, hey, come believe in me? Yeah, come believe. No. He said, come follow me. Come be like me. Why is it important? Because how many people have you encountered? Starting with your friends and family first. How many people have you encountered that they stumbled upon some sort of religious narrative or some religious leader who told them that they weren't really welcome because they didn't believe right, they didn't behave right, they didn't behave like them, therefore they didn't really belong? Do you see how it starts with belonging first? So what I want to do with you for the next few minutes is look at this fascinating story about belonging, and it comes from the Old Testament, this book called 2 Samuel. Any Ozark fans out there? Yeah, best TV show ever created. If you were into Ozark, you would dig the book of 2 Samuel. I mean, there's all kinds of violence and tribes and family dysfunction, and there's also some reconciliation and redemption in it. But this comes from 2 Samuel. You can read 2 Samuel later tonight from the Old Testament. It's a story about David and this guy named Mephibosheth. I want you to say his name with me because it's kind of a hard one. Mephibosheth. Yeah, see that H-I-B, P-H? It's like it is in phone. It makes the F sound. So it's Mephibosheth. And we're going to come back to that because it's all kinds of significant. Now, and I should also tell you, some of you are going to remember this story. This is a foundational story here at Free. This is right up there with the prodigal son. Remember the son who came back after squandering everything, and the father was good to him. This story is so foundational to us, and so I want to take our time with it. Now, here's the backstory to the story, and this one, y'all are going to love this one. The backstory to the story is David is this young, upcoming, rising star. But up till this point in 2 Samuel, David is not yet king. Saul is king, Saul. Now, Saul also had some sons. One of his sons' names was Jonathan. And David and Jonathan were like besties. I mean, they were tight. At one point, Jonathan says to David, David says to Jonathan, Jonathan, listen, man, you need to know I'm your guy. If anything ever happens to you, if anything ever happens, I will take care of your family. Like, I'm your guy. I will take care of things. And guess what? On that day, something did happen. Because they, the Israelites, were in this long, drawn-out, bloody battle with the Philistines. And the king was killed, King Saul, and all of his sons were killed. Now, a servant of Jonathan's, so Jonathan's dead, a servant of Jonathan sees what's happened to Jonathan on the battlefield, and he also sees Jonathan's 5-year-old son, Mephibosheth, run onto the battlefield. Now check it out. If the king dies and the son dies, well, who's next in line to be king? Yeah, 5-year-old Mephibosheth. Can you imagine a 5-year-old being king? Crazy, isn't it? So he's next in line. He's now a threat to the empire, a threat to the kingdom, because everyone who wants to be king would know that he's next in line. What do you do with threats? You get rid of the threat. So this servant sees him, 5-year-old Mephibosheth, run onto the battlefield. She freaks out. She runs after him. She scoops him up, picks him up. She starts running with him. And just like they do in the movie, she trips and falls and drops him. And the text says when she drops him, both of his feet were permanently broken. Now, why is this significant? Because in that time and in that day, if you had 2 permanently broken feet, you were nobody. You were cast off. You were on the very margins. You were put to shame. You couldn't go to war. You couldn't raise a family. You couldn't tend the fields. You were an absolute nobody. Now, fast forward some years. David is now the king. Mephibosheth is probably a teenager, still a threat to the kingdom, to the new king. And David comes to the household of Saul, and he has this conversation. Check it out. David asked, is there anyone from Saul's family still alive that I could show faithful love for Jonathan's sake? There was a servant from Saul's household named Ziba, and he was summoned before David. Are you Ziba? The king asked. At your service, he answered. The king asked, is there anyone left from Saul's family that I could show God's kindness to? Yes, Ziba said to the king, one of Jonathan's sons, whose feet are crippled, Mephibosheth. Where is he? The king asked. Oh, he's at the house of Amiel's son, Machir, at Lo-Debar. Now let's pause there for just a moment, because y'all know how much I love ancient Hebrew and Greek words, right? They tell us something deeper in the story. This place where he's living called Lo-Debar, do we have it on the screen? It literally translates as nothing, without pasture, land of nothingness. Mephibosheth is living in the land of nothingness. Let's keep going. So King David had him brought from the house of Amiel's son Machir at Lo-Debar. Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson, came to David, and he fell to the ground, bowing low out of respect, because he was fearful of his life. I added that part. Mephibosheth, David said. Yes, with a quivering voice, I added that part too. He replied, I'm at your service. Y'all, we got to pause one more time. Because this name Mephibosheth, it comes from somewhere. There's a meaning there. There were meaning to these ancient Hebrew names. His name means dispeller of shame. You mean the one who is supposed to make shame disappear, the dispeller of shame, is living in Lo-Debar, the land of nothingness? Are y'all seeing what's happening in the story? Let's see how the conversation ends. Yeah, who said yeah? Did someone say yeah? I appreciate that, yes. Whoever said it. It was like an amen. Don't be afraid, David told him. because I will certainly show you faithful love for the sake of your father, Jonathan. What? I thought you were here to kill me. I will restore to you all the fields of your grandfather Saul, and you will eat at my table always. Mephibosheth bowed low out of respect and said, who am I, your servant, that you should care about a dead dog like me? Talk about shame. Then David summoned Saul's servant Ziba and said to him, I have given your master's grandson everything belonging to Saul and his family. So Mephibosheth ate at the David's table like one of the king's own sons. See, sometimes when they would tell a story in the Old Testament, it would be like, y'all pay attention because this is an image of who God is. We're telling you who God is. This is who God is. I mean, can you imagine it? From a dead dog like me to sitting at the king's table as one of the king's own sons. And think about Mephibosheth's greatest fear. Man, the dude probably from 5 years old woke up every single morning looking out the window, wondering if the king was coming into his land of nothingness and would do off with his head to get rid of the threat. And on this day, that great fear comes to a reality, and he looks out the window and he sees the king walking towards him. He's like, it's over for me. Off with my head. For me, I'm the threat. And instead, this king says to him, Mephibosheth, my boy, you don't belong here. You don't belong living in shame and nothingness, the land of Lodabar. Mephibosheth, you belong at my table, and my table is big, and I have a seat at my table, and I want you to sit next to me. Now go back to that old model. Does it even make sense? I mean, think about it for Mephibosheth. What good would it have been if he had all the right head beliefs? What good would it have been? What good would it have been if he had all the right religious behaviors? But he's still living in Lodabar. He's still living in nothingness and all that shame. What good is it if he doesn't have belonging first? Y'all know when I got sober, when I was trying to get sober, I would go to this meeting many, many mornings. It was at 6:45 a.m. And I would sit with other alcoholics at a table. And man, what I can tell you is I didn't believe like them. Man, they believed crazy things. They believed stuff like, oh, God could do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And I'm like, bullshit, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know my story. I'm a pastor, man. I've tried all that. The God stuff doesn't work here. So stop. Just tell me how not to drink. Tell me how to make the pain stop so I don't have to pick up a drink tonight. Man, I didn't believe like them. I didn't behave like them either, because I was living in all this shame. My greatest fear was that people would actually stumble into my land of Lodabar and find out who I was and why I was there. Being a pastor and a drunk and crying out, God, just make the pain stop. How come you won't help me, God? Man, I didn't know how to behave like them. They would, at the end of the meeting sometimes, well, every time, stand up and hold hands in prayer, and it was these different prayers, and they would do this third step prayer, and they're all looking down, praying, and I'm like, how do you guys know how to do this? Like, is it on the floor somewhere? Because y'all are looking down. Did you just memorize? Like, how do you guys learn how to do this? And y'all know when the meeting would start, I would be the last one to walk in because I didn't want to connect or fellowship with anyone, because I did not want to be known. And so I would walk in right as the meeting's starting, hoping to take my seat in the back in that Lodabar nothingness. And every time I did that, man, there was always someone in that meeting who'd be like, hey, Ryan, there's a seat right next to me. The seat's open. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to sit there. I don't want to know you, and I don't want you to know me. I just want to stop drinking. And do you all know, at the end of every meeting, I would be the first one to jet out the doors because I don't want to be known. I don't want to be seen. And some yahoo would always say the same thing like he actually believed it. Keep coming back. And see, I think they understood something about the great reversal. Not believe, behave, and belong, but create space for that belonging first, and then the rest might happen. And in those early days of sitting with those people more than 9 years ago, Yeah, I haven't picked up a drink in 9 years. Talk about a change in behavior. Yeah, I now have a deep-seated belief that God can do for us what we could not do for ourselves. Talk about a change of belief. And listen, if you have experienced the beauty of belonging, you now have a duty. You now have a cross to bear. You now have a moral obligation to create that space for other people, to create that space of belonging. It's why free exists. And my brothers and sisters, Mephibosheth, this is our story, isn't it? I mean, maybe you've been existing in that land, and it is just existing. It's not living. You've been existing in that land of Lodabar, the land of shame and nothingness, wondering where you stand with God. God, am I good enough? Do you like me? Wondering where you stand because of something in your past. And God comes along, knocks at the door and says, yo, you don't belong there. You belong here with me. There's a seat at the table. And hear me on this. At Free, you belong. Simply put, you belong not for anything you've done or didn't do. You belong because you belong at God's table. Because God pulls us out of that mess and says, you don't belong there, you belong here. We don't do shame. We don't kick the wounded. You're welcome at the table. And if we're honest, there's a bit of Mephibosheth in all of us, isn't there? 1,000 reasons we could give of why we're not good enough, why we're not worthy enough, why we shouldn't belong. But my friends, your past does not have to define you. You can open yourself to a new way. Allow God saying to you, come sit at my table. Allow that to define how you behave in the world, how you live. Let that define how you believe. Let belonging come first in your life and in the life of others. So I want to close with this song, just give you a moment to reflect. It's a beautiful song by a country singer called, I think his name is Walker Hayes. Anyone heard of him? Sorry for those of you online, you'll just have to YouTube it later. It's a song called Craig, and it's a song about a guy in his life who happened to be a pastor, created a sense of belonging for him and transformed his life. The power of belonging. So take a moment and reflect. Where have you experienced belonging? And how are you helping others experience belonging? Anyway, she sent me that song while we were in Costa Rica a couple weeks ago, and this beautiful. Y'all will have to listen to it later. I mean, this. He drives off in this minivan that was given to him and gets pulled over by a cop, but now has got 6 seat belts. So, anyway, this beautiful song of sense of belonging created in his life. All right, y'all, here's what we are going to do. We always have each and every Saturday night a guest storyteller in the house, and here is one of our very own, Derek Didle. Let me say a word about Derek before he comes fully up. Derek, and he'll probably say this, man, when he first came into Free, he was a hot mess. Y'all said it. I forgot to get the picture. I don't know what you were weighing at the time, $140 or something like that. He was coming in high on meth, but he knew that we didn't do shame, and he knew he was welcomed here. And I've gotten to see his life transform in really incredible ways. So, Derek Didle, come on up here, brother. Did you get a hey D?
Yeah, that's right.
Hey D.
What?
All right, D. So you have shared some of your story before as a guest storyteller. I think it's been over a year. But when we read together the story of Mephibosheth last week, you said you could identify with Mephibosheth, being injured as a young kid, living in shame, living in this land of nothingness, addiction, and keeping secrets. And you said, I did not belong. So tell us, how do you identify with Mephibosheth? What was it like?
Man, how do I identify with Mephibosheth? Like, I was absolutely injured, destroyed, damaged as I saw myself. I mean, at the age of 5, I saw some things that happened in my family that, a 5-year-old should never see. And I ended up having to carry those things for a long time. And again, anything I say tonight, I love my family so much, and they did such a great job. My parents raised me great. They gave me a lot of good things, but we struggled to connect emotionally. We struggled to love each other the right ways. We competed and used sarcasm was our ways to deal with emotions. But I grew up in a Catholic religion where, reconciliation and confession, and I couldn't confess this because I love my family so much. My mom worked for the church, and that started my addiction. I had so much shame over the fact that because I couldn't confess what was going on in my life, because I would rather choose my family than choose the Catholic religion, I thought I was going to hell at a young age. I thought I was disowned. And as I grew up, I found sports.
D, hold the mic.
As I grew up, I found sports, and that was really my first identity, my first addiction. I would look at my mom wanting her love, and then I would look at my father and understand that I wasn't telling him certain things, and that shame hit me because I just wanted both. But what I went through kept me from doing that. So I grew up, I got into sports, and that was my first addiction. That was my identity. And later in life, there would be a blow-up over that. And it really hurt. It really hurt to go to church and not feel like I belonged. And that led me to using. I mean, after I went to college, as long as I had baseball and sports, I did well in school. I was a good dude. But I hurt my shoulder, and they put me on opiates. And that was the first start of understanding what that stuff did. I found my God, because the one God I learned about, I feared. So I had this new power.
So, Derek, what was the fear? So you said you feared this God, and you also said you tried to follow all the religious rules of the church.
Yeah.
And so was the fear of God, and it's interesting because was Maggie last week? Maggie was last week, who talked about this confession. I didn't grow up Catholic, so I never had to do the confessional booth thing. But was it the fear of you would be so rejected, God would send you to hell, or you were so bad, God would send you to this eternal place of suffering?
Like why I could confess my sins?
Well, what the fear of God, what was the fear?
Well, the fear of God was I understood that how the Catholic religion, how I grew up seeing it, was there was these rules. And because I couldn't confess my sins because I didn't want it known what was happening, there was shame over that, so God couldn't love me. So, I got baptized, I went through reconciliation. These are all steps in the Catholic religion that I followed just so I could try to belong, and it never worked. As we go into, and we'll talk about this later, like this turned me into the addiction that I had. I had so much shame over not being able to go to God that, again, I turned to alcohol and drugs, and my life went south quick. Like I said, the opiates hit, and every time I would come back to church or come back drunk, they would, put me in the corner. I always thought about, like, it was a thought in my head that made me laugh. But I could picture the priest talking to the bishop, like going through the Bible. We got leprosy, we got blind, we can cure that, but I don't see anything about addiction. And,
You found a loophole.
yeah, and like they go to Pope Francis. He's like, maybe they got an opening at the Methodist Church or Protestant. We'll send them there. But they didn't know what to do with me. I couldn't stop. I came in homeless. I was homeless for 2-3 years of my life. I've been in prison for 7 or 8 of my life, in and out of jail and prison. And it all started back to what you said, that shame.
Yeah.
I just was living like Mephibosheth. I was hiding. I was destroyed. Both my feet were broken because of addiction. And they didn't have an answer for me. And it's not that there was bad people in the Catholic religion. There's a lot of people that loved me. But I feared God so bad. I didn't feel like I belonged. I was so separate. There was nothing I could do to get back to him. And that in place I went to, I remember riding to prison. And it's sad when, like, the best parts of my life and before I got sober were my 3 years in prison. Even though I went through traumatic experiences, I had hard times, I got to be sober. But I thought that's what I was chosen to be, that God loved me that so little that that's where I ended up. Like, that was the best place for me, that there was no place for me at the table.
You said the church would send you to the corner. What do you mean by that?
I mean, that's where I belong. Like, it's okay. So I would show up, and like I said, there's people that would help me. And like, Derek, go sit in the prayer area, and when we're done with Mass, we'll come talk to you and whatnot. And, that feeling of already, like, at 5-year-old being separate, and now I'm 28, 30 years old, coming back to the church, being put in the corner at that age, why can't you stop? What's going on? Maybe say 25 more Hail Marys. Pray to St. Francis, and I'm like, what does animals have to do with this? Like, it was hard. It was a sad thing. It was a very lonely existence. And again, there was people that loved me and tried, but they just didn't have answers. Religion didn't have an answer for my problem. And it sucked to be put in the corner. It was hard.
So homeless, in prison, life of addiction, discovering a sense of belonging. How'd that happen?
So you're talking about when I came to free, right?
Yeah, that time in your life.
So, I mean, the first sense of grace I ever felt was from a man sitting here, Lex Papish, and my mom brought me to free actually the first time, which that's funny in itself. But I had so much drugs on me, and I called, and this is where my place of shame thought, like, I'm going to go back to prison. And I gave this man a call, and I'm like, hey, I've got drugs that you're sober living. I understand if you have to call the police. I understand if you have to take me back to right where I belong, because that's where I belong. And this man showed up, and he gave me a hug, took the drugs, and he said, let's find another way. And that was the first time I felt like I belonged. I understood kind of what God was. But I remember walking into free, and I remember seeing him with his backwards hat on, the tattoos, and everything came rushing back from when I was like, okay, here we go. This guy's going to preach grace, tell me everything. As soon as I tell him I'm a meth addict, that was an abuser, been to prison, we'll just kick him out of here. And that never happened. It just never happened. It was such a cool feeling. And I remember sitting there going, what is this? And I kept coming back. And it's like you said, the belong behave, believe.
Yeah.
You know, there was one moment, like I was struggling so bad on meth, and you guys had some pizza get together, and I'm still showing up in the corner. I'm still freaking pulling up hot on meth, you know, spinning in my psychosis. People are just like, what's going on? This guy had 92 different colors in my hair. And
He ain't lying either, for
No.
those of you that remember.
somehow I had all my teeth. That doesn't make sense, but a lady that's very dear to me, Cindy Rapp, I didn't have any money. Any money I manipulated from people, I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm sitting there at this thing, this pizza get together, and this lady hands me $10 to get a pizza. And my first thought is, this could get me a pretty good ounce of meth. But my second thought was like, holy crap. No one in my past life would ever hand me cash because they knew what I would do with it. This lady saw who I was way before I could see myself, and I went and bought a pizza. And you don't know how much that meant to me. Like, I got to belong first. And you know, today, like Tammy Canaday, she would look at me with just a look and make me feel like I belong with just a hug. And today I get to sit and watch her kid, who goes from ex-convict, homeless, abuser, manipulator, and people in this community saw me for who I was, and I get to sit with the pastor's kids on my own. I mean, that's a true blessing. And it's come full circle, which is so cool. As I get to do those things now, can I read this real quick?
Yeah, man.
I don't know if you know Stephanie Fields. I love her so much. She's in Florida.
She's probably watching right now on
Probably.
YouTube.
I love you. So she wrote me on Messenger, and this was kind of cool today. Wrote yesterday. She goes, I'm so excited for your story tomorrow night. Beat that drum, my man cub. Raise the vibrations. You radiate peace. I can't wait to see you. I love you. And I said, I love you. And that's another cool thing. I tell people I love them. I tell other men that I love them. I would never, ever do that in my life. And I said, I love you. I was actually, if I remember, talk about full circle. When you walked into Free, not even knowing you, I hugged you, told you I loved you. Your head was shaved. You were lost at home. And I got to love you. And I got to love you. I said, is that okay if I share that? And she says, I'm honored to have a place in your story. You hold a sweet place in mine. You also held my hands in and out of the baptism wagon. When I had no family and friends in attendance, you made a difference in making me feel welcome. To open myself up and forever grateful for your hugs. I could count on them, and that meant a lot to me. That's just cool how that's full circle in my life and what this community's done. You guys pierced my darkness. John 5, Tammy said it last week, you know, the light pierced the darkness, and no part of the darkness can survive in the light. You guys shine so bright, I had no choice but to keep coming back, and you entered the cracks of my brokenness. You allowed me to be broken so I could be whole. And today, I'm one of the first people you'll see here that I say, I love you. You're so loved. And that's such a switch from living in so much shame to not having any. And having a community that'll just meet me where I'm at, get on the floor when I'm hurt, when I'm joyful, they'll celebrate with me. Whoever thought, being an ex-convict, that I would have this joy in my life, that I would have a community that supports and loves me this way.
How do you describe God?
How do I describe God? Wow.
And this is not a theological paper, Derek. This is
No, he's a God of grace. I learned that here. He's a God that no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing, I mean, you said the prodigal son, but you also talk about Mephibosheth. No matter where you're at or what you're doing, you get a seat at his table. He loves you now more than he'll ever love you. It don't matter if you're in the darkest places or the best places. Like, he has grace and compassion and love for you, and he is not separate. I think that was the biggest lie I had in my life, was I was told that God was separate from me. And the one thing this place taught me was God lives here. And I get to start from here out, and that grace and compassion, that light fires out, and God is just right here beating his drum. And then I see you, and it's like you just see God in all of you, and we're surrounded by his light and his love, and that's what this place has taught me, that God is in all of us.
That's a pretty good word, Dave. So let me ask you just a closing question.
You got 2 of them.
Oh, I do have 2 of them because, yeah, well, let's get to that just one second. I promise we're almost
Yeah,
done.
you promised I could do it.
But for someone who has a past, they have a past and they're sitting here tonight. Maybe it's a distant past, maybe it's a not so recent past, but they're saying, man, I screwed it up too badly. Man, you don't know what I did. What do you say to them? What hope do you give?
Someone that's in the land of nothing.
Yeah, in that land of Lodabar,
Land
who's
of
in the
limbo.
nothingness, the shame, and that shame is ruling their story, and you're speaking of this God of hope. What do you say to them?
For being the man that came from the depths of the darkness, from limbo, from there to who I am now, and if you see this and you understand the miracle that's happened in my life, I ask you just to take that first step of faith. My suggestion is, if you're isolated, if you're alone, if you're using the bottle, if you're facing prison time, if you're homeless, or you're facing so many other things, divorce, abuse, we don't do this alone. I think the biggest choice I ever made was to walk in somewhere and just have the courage to take that next step of faith, because I can't be fearless, but I had the courage to try, and it's so uncomfortable. But today, I wouldn't trade any of that, because God wastes none of it. So I'm going to tell you this right now. All that darkness you're in, all that struggle, today is my biggest strength. Prison, homelessness, my addiction, my abuse. You're like, wait a second, why are you saying this is a strength? I'm saying it because today I get to wear it on my sleeve as a heart, because God has it in his hands. And I get to tell you that because someone else needs to hear it. That your story matters, that what you do matters, and God has a plan for that. I went through that suffering so I could get closer to him. I had to make the choice, though. I had to take a step, and I walked in these doors. I walked into 12-step. I walked into sober living, and things started to change. I practiced what everyone else is practicing, and if you want a place that'll help you feel belonging first, so you can practice those things, so you can come to the same belief I am, or whatever belief you have in God, just have the courage to reach out and try. Because he will take your story and make it the most beautiful thing ever. He will take your weaknesses and make them the biggest strength ever. I get to share this today, and those are my strengths. They are not my weaknesses anymore.
Beautiful, man. So tell us in closing, he gave this beautiful image sitting in my office. Where do you imagine Jesus?
I love Jesus, so let's not get that wrong, but this whole thing took me there. But I picture Jesus walking in here. It's funny, he's got flip-flops on with a tank top that says free, and on the back it's like, it says what religion with a question mark, and he's got a tattoo, we don't do shame, and he's like, finally, I did all this, I abolished the rules, all that stuff, so I could sit in the people that I wanted to connect with most. And he's like, this is for everybody. So I see him up front, just sitting there with his hair back, slick back, just like, And that's what's cool, is I think he would be so happy, and that brings me such joy, because I think this is what he wanted. I think he just wanted us to get together and be the most spiritual people we could connect. He didn't want us to have rules about how we connected to him. He just wanted to teach us that we had to let go of all the rules so we could just love each other as we love ourselves. And when I choose to love you, I have no choice but to love myself. If I choose not to love you, then I'm judging. So just choose to love each other and love yourself, and Jesus is just right up front, just like, we don't do shame, baby,
Derek Geidel, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, shoot, I'm so sit down. They always tell me everybody, stay seated. Stay seated, Ryan. Sometimes they send me to the corner. All right, y'all, thank you, Dee, for being with us tonight and each week. Listen, the way we close here is we close with sharing our heartaches together. We lift up the hard stuff. See, we don't ignore the hard stuff. We just save it for last. So just like we do celebrations, whatever those heavy burdens that you're carrying, those heavy things that we like to carry around and think we can carry them around on our own, even though we suck at it, those are the things we lift up. And we believe that God hears the cries of the people. And we have a prayer team here at Free that prays for you throughout the week. And so I just invite you at this time, if you're online, drop them in the comments on Facebook or YouTube. And if you're here in the room, just like we did for 3 minutes of celebration, we'll do 3 minutes of heartache and just lift up the thing that you're carrying. And this community will walk with you and encourage you and pray for you. All right, let's take 3.
Turns up safe.
All right, we're going to pray for your mom. Thank you for sharing that with us, Wendy. Hey, we got one more. Can we do one more?
My name is Jill. I'd like prayers for myself. I'm going through some very difficult times and facing some big decisions and needing God's grace. So please keep me in your prayers.
Continued prayers for you, Jill. Glad you're here. Who's joining me up here? Derek, just keep on going, man. From guest storyteller to heartaches.
Yes, right.
Let's do this thing.
I'm coming. I'm wandering.
She looks better than you, Dee. That's the problem.
Thanks for sharing tonight, Dee. I love you, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, shall we? You want to go first?
Yeah, there's some heartache on the back end tonight. Oof. Mm-hmm. Tucker, I want to lift up all the people that knew us when we weren't ourselves. I know that the people around me at my worst had their own stories that I was too self-absorbed to see. I hope they are well. Tucker, thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah. Glad y'all are part of this community, you and Sierra. Trip or Sharon, one of them says, it's Sharon. I want to pray for my husband as he works in helping people in recovery, and he has had a rough past week in a few of his sober homes. I also want to pray for the families that have lost someone to addiction. Thank you, Sharon. We're lifting up Trip and the people in the sober living homes and all those who suffer through addiction. So thank you for lifting them up. We've heard story after story. I mean, we were talking tonight about the pain. There's lots of pain out there. So the importance of gathering together as community.
Hey, Carrie, chemo's getting harder. Please pray I get through this. Man, we think of you every day and pray for you every day. And dang, we miss you here with us in this
John
community.
and Carrie, we miss you both, and we're holding you both in prayer. So, yeah, we're going to lift you up this week. Stephanie said, who Derek was referring to, in Naples, Florida, it's been a few weeks since I've heard my son's voices. For this mom, that's hard.
That is tough.
Stephanie, we're thinking about you, and we're praying for you, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Love you, Stephanie. See that you're on YouTube. That's why I didn't notice you online. Glad you're here. Jen says, God, hear my prayers for both my brothers. My older brother, Doug, had another surgery yesterday to remove his toe, praying that this is the last of his surgeries and the beginning of his healing and pain-free. And my younger brother, Dino, God, please be with him on his journey. You know his needs. Amen.
Prayers for Doug and Dino.
It's been a journey for them and for you,
Yeah.
and continued prayers.
All right, thank you, Tammy, for joining me up here. Yeah, you can give it back to Dee. All right, y'all, thank you for being part of this community and for entrusting this community with your heart, your celebrations and your heartaches. That's a cool, sacred thing to be a part of. One of the ways we continue to keep this mission of breaking the silence of addiction thriving in the world is, and you hear me say this every week, I try to think of new ways to spin it or say it, and there's really not a new way. We're here because of your generous giving. That's one of the things that keeps us going. So if you feel called to give a donation tonight, no matter how big or how small, we are really, really grateful for those donations. It helps us thrive in the world. And if you're not a cash person like me, well, there's 3 online ways to give. You can give on the app. It's free to download the free spiritual community app. All the messages are on there. All the storytellers are on there too. Lots of content, but you can find giving there. Give one time or monthly, bi-monthly, however you want to do it. Same way with the website, freespiritualcommunity.com. You can give that way, or you can text the number on your screen and it'll walk you through a simple set of instructions. Your generous giving grows the mission here at Free. So thank you all who are part of that and who give on a regular basis. It means so much to us here. Even on a one-time basis, it means a lot here. So thank you for being part of that. All right, y'all, I think we should close in a word of prayer. Do you agree? I think we should go out with this. Oh, check this out. Let me say this first. In June, we're going to do this series called Dangerous Prayers. We're going to look at the prayers like the Serenity Prayer. Someone asked me the other day, what's so dangerous about it? It's like, have you prayed that thing? It will take you to some uncomfortable places. We're going to look at the Serenity Prayer, the Lord's Prayer, the St. Francis Prayer. Man, that thing is beautiful and dangerous. And Third Step Prayer. So we're going to spend 4 weeks in dangerous prayers. But tonight, let's go out this dangerous prayer called the Third Step Prayer. I invite you to open your hands. It's a sign of openness for the new thing God is doing. It's also a sign of letting go. And invite God into your breath. Take a moment and just take a big, deep breath. If you don't know the prayer, it's on your screen. Oh, it's actually Third Step Prayer, not Serenity Prayer. God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Amen. My brothers and sisters, may you this week experience all kinds of grace and peace and know here and know in God's eyes that we do not do shame. You don't belong there. You belong at God's table. So for that, go in grace and peace, and we will see you next week.